We're quickly moving towards the third conversation for today, because despite its transformative potential, blockchain faces several hurdles that must be addressed to really realize its full promise. The upcoming conversation will actually aim to provide a comprehensive overview of the multifaceted challenges within the technology, from technical limitations and security threats to legal and regulatory hurdles. Please welcome Birgitte van Haaren and Reinier Bredenoord. Warm welcome.
Thank you.
Warm welcome. Please have a seat. Ja, kom lekker hier zitten dan. Top. All right, warm welcome. Already mentioned your name, Brigitte. Maybe you can shortly introduce yourself. And I would like to keep it short because you have a very, very inspiring resume. So,
shall I start with my name?
Please. Yeah.
No, like we were just kidding last night. So everybody calls me Bay. Just to let you know, because I think nobody knows actually my real name. So feel free to use my first letter as well.
B.
B, yes. Yeah, most sure. Welcome. Just a quick introduction. I think one of the things that was mentioned for me was my article that I've written, The 7 Capital Sins of Enterprise Blockchain. I think that's not a very woke title, so I apologize up front. But the reason that I wrote that article, it's a distraction of my thesis, of my PhD thesis, which I did recently. I have a background as a trader, and I've been a CEO of a market maker and a commodity trader also for a couple of years. And then when a new technology popped up, of course I started trading immediately, and then I heard a lot of talk about DAOs, and I thought, DAOs? No, I want to have adoption. If I want to have adoption, I need to find a way on how enterprises can work with blockchain. So that's why I did my research, which was also supported by Deloitte at the Technical University of Eindhoven, and I developed a protocol to manage the governance of enterprise blockchain systems, particularly in the enterprise environment. So that's my introduction. Nowadays I work together with Deloitte on many different topics in crypto, but also in enterprise blockchain.
Wonderful. Warm welcome to you.
Is that short enough?
It's short enough.
Okay.
Reinier, welcome.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. Well, I'm not a scholar like Brigitte is on the topic, but I'm specialized in the criminal side of and the criminal use of cryptocurrencies for over 6 years now. So I've worked at the public prosecutors. I worked there for a long time now. And I must add, my opinion is not necessarily the opinion of my employer, so what I say is on a personal note. Having made that disclaimer, back to you, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And it's good you make the disclaimer again. Yeah. Warm welcome. Now, then Reinier, let's start with the easy questions. We had a Tornado Cash court case lately. There's a lot of commotion, of course, around the court case. Some say it will really hurt open innovation, like really open source software innovation here in the Netherlands. Do you agree on this?
Well, I think it's a complex matter, and it's a very intriguing matter, of course. Any short answer has the problem. It doesn't do right to the matter at hand. What I think is very important to know that also if you read the court documentation, if you read the interview one of the prosecutors gave to Wired, for example, this matter was not about open source technology or building open source technology. It was about offering a service which can be seen as a money laundering service, or the verdict says this is a money laundering service under Dutch money laundering legislation, and that's what the case was really about. But there is a lot of nuance, and I think for anyone who's interested, the prosecutors are also very eager and keen to explain this even further. But I think it's important to say something about it now because, well, it's the pink elephant in the room, I guess. So it's important to mention something about it, and I would advise anyone to start reading the court documentation, including the verdict the court has put online.
Because here we will find details actually about the way of operating, how this tool is actually used by sanctioned states and that kind of stuff, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And what has been proven for the offers or the people behind the service, what they knew at a certain point in time. And under Dutch regulation, it's very important that if you know you are moving criminal money, you have to act, you have to do something. That's very important.
What do you think, B?
Yeah, can I ask you a question? If I'm out of bounds, and I'm sure you will not answer, I'm just thinking, because you have read everything, what are the learnings? Because I think many of the people are programmers in the room and do technical work, and I think it's probably good for them to understand where the learnings are from this court case. What is, as a developer, and maybe one of the last thing you mentioned is one of the things they need to remind themselves, that if they see anything that could potentially be criminal, that they have an obligation to do something. Is that one of the main learnings here?
Well, I think, yeah, and if you look at to you from your own perspective as a developer, because there's nothing wrong with, and it's, well, I put it negatively, but it's good to put up open source on GitHub and places like that. When you start building an enterprise around it and offering a service and making a money-earning model out of it, then you start moving assets, you start controlling assets, and that's the point where you have some obligations. It's as simple as that, I think.
Yeah.
So as a developer, I need to take note on how the things that I'm developing are being applied and used.
Well, not per se as a developer, although, and there's nuance in that as well, you can write code which is criminal in its core. So if you build software which can only be used for hacking, for example, it's criminal.
That's an obvious case.
But if you write the code, that's not the problem from this perspective. It's about offering the service and about earning money and knowing where money came from.
Okay, so you have to be aware of what's happening with your code.
And as you asked earlier, if you read court documentation, a lot more is explained.
Wonderful. Now, B, speaking of learnings, what were the key takeaways from the 7 capital sins in governance of blockchain ecosystems?
Okay, I will not bore you with all 7.
Just short and concise. Like what's the most
just a few of them. I think the ones that are, for me, the reason that I wrote that article, because I wrote a book as well on my thesis. And I think the book is not readable, to be honest. I think the professors liked it, but I think it's not readable personally. So
but
I
you
made
delivered, right?
Yeah, I delivered.
Boom,
so
stamp.
I got the stamp. So
and there's an abstract, I guess.
No, that's still being published. But this one is even sweeter. This one is only 3 pages, very readable for the general manager, and it was published in one of the top engineering publications. Which apparently that's what my professor tells me because I have 0 clue. But anyway, I wanted to make the point to managers who wanted to use this technology that they need to think about a few things. That's why the title was like that. But I think one of the most important things, for example, is the topic of pride. You see a lot of initiatives, I think. For example, TradeLens, with a lot of groups of the different companies who start well, but they have issues in their leadership profile. And so often the governance, not the technology, but the governance around an initiative is lacking continuity to make it successful. So if, for example, if you are not willing to share as an enterprise company, and you take too much pride in having leadership over a group, the other members will feel that and will not continue to join, and then it will fall apart. That's a good example. Another example which comes from practice as well is one NGO had invested in an application, and this application was built under on a blockchain called Eternity, that not everybody might be familiar with, which experienced a very classic 51% hack by a group of Chinese miners. This NGO, a very reputable NGO, invested a lot of money in building this application, was very convinced that they did the right thing. They didn't pay attention to the fact that the underlying technology was maybe not as solid. So having an understanding of what the underlying technology is, the layers below, is very important. That's very often overseen. So these are some of the learnings that came back from my research.
Yeah. Now, speaking of sins, Reinier, I mean, some of the sins that people usually proclaim when it comes to cryptocurrency is the anonymous nature of cryptocurrency. Given this fact, how can law enforcement agencies effectively trace and interdict illicit activities without infringing on privacy rights?
Yes, well, in much cases it's a hell of a job to follow the money trail. But I think, as everyone is aware, cryptocurrency is not completely anonymous. Everything you do online or in the digital domain has some traces. So that means there are clues, there are possibilities. We can do digital financial forensics, especially the investigative agencies can do that. So they need highly specialized technical and financial specialists who are able to do the tracing, which is difficult. It's a challenge. It always stays a challenge, and it's always a cat and mouse game between what technology we can use, what insights we have, what traces we can follow, and criminals realizing they have to put up another step to stay ahead of us. And I think that cat and mouse play is as old as criminal acting is in itself. And well, one of the advantages we have is that not everybody knows how far we have advanced. So that's important. And the other important thing is, in the end, privacy is one of our main rights in the digital domain, especially in a highly digital society. But investigative agencies and the prosecution service do have certain rights in specific cases. If we have the suspicion of criminal behavior, we have authorities that nobody else has, and we can use that authorities. We can gather information. Companies which we ask for information are obliged to help us. That's what the law says, and they tend to do so. We can use the right technology. So it's difficult, but in many cases we get there. And I think well, privacy is a very great good, like I already said, but it's not an absolute right. And on the other side, there's the security and the criminal battling interest, and it's always about the balance between those two.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's still reports being published that there's almost no criminality anymore, it seems, on the blockchain, right? There's always this number that is being published about crypto criminality every year, that it's only a fraction of a percent, right?
Yes, well, I think those reports are very interesting to read, but, and I've mentioned this before, I would not take them too serious. There are a few aspects to mention, I guess. First is, it's companies or organizations who do research, they don't have all the information. If you go online and if you look at certain types of crime, you can pinpoint criminal actors. You can see this is a criminal descent or this is a criminal destination. For example, in ransomware. In specific cases of ransomware, you can see this address has been used to receive ransomware payments. So you can say, well, we can label this as criminal. The same is for some scams, for fraud, for online drug trafficking. But there's also a lot of crime where you need investigative information to actually pinpoint the criminal heritage. So for example, offline drug trafficking, you can use crypto to do large payments from the Netherlands to, say, South America. You have to know, you have to know on basis of the information of the investigative agency or the prosecutor service or the tax authorities to know it's criminal. And I think it's very important to stipulate that in the Netherlands at least, and I think it's in the entire EU, we have strict regulations on what information investigative agencies share with the rest of the world, and actually that's nothing. We share information with the court, and that's it. So companies making these claims base their statistics on not the complete picture, and I think that's a dangerous thing to do.
Yeah.
So, if as a metaphor, we always say, in the crypto community always says Bitcoin to the moon. In the end, there's a dark side of the moon, and nobody really knows how big the dark side is, and we're still working on, well, making that more clear and shine the light on it.
That's a beautiful quote. We're definitely going to use that in our social media. That's a beautiful quote.
Thank you.
Now there's a lot of criminality, please.
Yeah, can I ask something, Tom? But isn't it the case, actually, that even though, of course, there's criminality, I think that's unavoidable, because that's, if that's possible, it's there, that it's relatively small and easier to detect in this case, compared to regular...
I would not advise criminals to go into crypto. I understand there are a lot of scams.
That's not what I'm saying.
There's a lot of scams, and I think the bigger the economy gets and the bigger the ecosystem gets...
But the traceability, the transparency, it's much better than whether... I mean, one of the reasons that we sit together is because I established the Institute for Financial Crime. I'm very much aware of money laundering activities, but more on the dollar side, to be honest, and where people take a suitcase to pay something in Iran and travel with that. I think that's...
With cash.
With cash, which is much more difficult, I think, with what we have available. Of course, there's criminality, but I think it's much more transparent. We are able to detect it easier. We can follow it easier. Or you disagree on that part?
No, I agree with you, but with a nuance, because if you want to pay $200 million from the Netherlands to Iran with cash, you have a logistic problem. You have to get it there.
Well, I can tell you
with
ways
crypto,
to do that.
okay, well,
let's not share
I need that tips later on. But if you want to do it if you do it on chain, yes, it's traceable. But what we also see is a ledger being used as a payment method. So I can give you a ledger with, let's say, 10 Bitcoin on it, and give you the keys. And we have made a transaction. Nobody knows. Nobody can trace it. So there are ways to use cryptocurrency as a payment service, doing it offline or doing it off-chain. So that's where the risks still lie. And of course, we still see a lot of scams, a lot of fraud, a lot of people losing their investments or their money or what they think is their investment. Which I think are problems which need to be solved before you go to grand-scale adoption. Yeah.
There's a lot of problems to be solved, also when it comes to criminality, security. What emerging trends in blockchain security should enterprises be aware of, and how can they prepare for these future developments?
Yeah. I think the future developments, I think data privacy, I think we already talked about it quite a bit. I think it's difficult and it needs to be well established. I think standardization would be super helpful if we get a bit more standardization, because then we can much better understand and exchange data. And I think the third one is, as you mentioned, I think one of the other issues is the cross-border data flows that we just discussed. I think also from the perspective of criminality, that's definitely also a chance, I think, going forward, very much so.
Yeah. Now, there's questions coming in from the audience, and one of them is...
You're kidding me.
Sorry?
I didn't know that was possible, but okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, it's a conversation with...
Got you by surprise,
Yeah.
No, I mean, usually there's tons of very good questions coming in from the audience. And I have to be honest, there are so many questions. Unfortunately, I cannot ask them all to you.
Okay.
So I'm happy that you actually are here the entire day. One of them is actually that I also read more often, Reinier, is the use of blockchain for payments not actually a blessing for investigative authorities?
Yes, I think, well, the short answer is yes. I think if you do on-chain payments, it's very traceable, it's very transparent, so we can really see what's happening. Yeah.
Now, to both of you, I mean, we're here to really shine a light on both the negative but also positive sides of the technology, the future outlook, the broader adoption, of course. How can we change this narrative around blockchain from being associated from just a speculative asset to being seen as a foundational technology for trust and security? How do you think we can change this narrative?
You want to take this first?
My guest.
Well, I think...
I'm going to answer the same answer, more or less.
Well, if I look from it from a crime fighting perspective, I think it's important that we all realize that there is criminal behavior and that there's a responsibility to tackle that. And I think that influences the narrative as well. I think just shouting, there's nothing wrong, no criminals can use it because it's transparent, is denying the fact that we see a lot of criminal cases around the globe with virtual assets being involved. And it makes your story less compelling if you just deny the problem, I think. I think that's well, one important thing to do. And well, the other is just keep building and make it happen and make sure you have the use cases where the world says, wow, we need this.
Yeah. B?
Yeah, I think we should not mix up two things. First of all, we have a crypto domain where I think that's also one of your core activities on a daily basis. And we have the technology itself. And I think we need to educate people that these are two different things. The technology capabilities are endless. I think that is super important to understand. That's also the reason why I did my research, because I think the adoption needs to be there, and people need to understand what the opportunity is also of using this technology. And so that means education, very important, and of course, like you say, use cases, build use cases, use example cases. I think from my Deloitte perspective, we have lots of clients we work with. We not necessarily talk about the technology, but we talk about the capabilities that it can provide for them in their business.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we're going to close down this session a bit, and maybe we can end with a combination of two questions. One of them, what would be, if you had a magic stick, what would be this big challenge that you would directly solve with this magic stick? And then looking forward in the upcoming months, what are you looking forward to? What kind of challenges would actually be solved already by policy or technological advancements? Can I start with you, Reinier?
Well, if you talk about the magic stick, what would be perfect if we would have a payment system which would be decentralized, which would be transparent, but also would provide privacy and anonymity to whomever wants to use it, but which would also serve investigative agencies to get the information they need, and well, that's, I think, a very tricky situation where we just have to make some steps, and if we would combine, well, blend in a form of super stable digital identity and authorities or the possibilities for authorities to get the information only if they have a right to get it. Situations like that, well, that would be perfect. Yeah. And the other question was what I'm looking forward for the next
months.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think what would be, well, that's also, I think, one of the elephants, but MyCar is being implemented, so we will get the start of a regulatory framework within the EU. And I'm very curious to see what will happen and where companies will land and what products will, in the end, derive from the possibilities which are there. And I think it's very interesting because I always think that if you write regulation or policy or legislation for technological development, it's very important that you actually write tech-neutral legislation, because you just cannot pace up with the developments. So you have to write down legislation which is actually adoptable in many situations. And well, the problem with that is you need judges in the end to have a look at it and to say, in this case we see a problem, and in this case we see possibilities. But I think that will all happen in the next half a year, and so I'm looking forward to that.
Wonderful. B?
I think I could answer a lot of things, but maybe I stick with two things. I think first of all, I love the idea that we in the EU we have a rule book called MiCAR now, which I think very beneficial to the development of the sector. And I think we see from business perspective, a lot of influx into Europe from companies who are willing to start here because they understand what the rule book is, which is, I think, very, very positive. So I perceive that as something very positive. But I also want to mention something else, which I think would be an opportunity, because we have lots of new technologies at the moment. We have blockchain, but we have AI and other things as well. And I was reading a research the other day about the amount of applications, AI applications that make use of blockchain technology. Yeah. And I think that's a very interesting area, because at the end of the day, this technology is very difficult to understand and complex for many people. And we do not want to create a situation where we don't understand what we are doing anymore. And I think if we can use the technology to capture the provenance of what we do in AI with blockchain, I think that would be super helpful to continue the transparency, to understand how the decision is made, the autonomous decision that is being made by an AI. And I think many people use ChatGPT nowadays, but they have no clue, because they have not disclosed what the database is that it was used to create the whole technology, which is, I think, totally unacceptable. Yeah. I think data provenance, understanding based on what decisions are made, will be more and more important in the future. And I think blockchain can provide a technology to support that. Yeah,
one of the bigger developments indeed that I also look forward to, not just tokenization of blockchain technology only, but also really the convergence with other technologies. Yeah. Thank you so much for this insightful conversation, Bee and Reinier. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.